Tennessee. And Kentucky. How y'all doing? Tennessee's only favored by 12 over Kentucky at home at night, and they're dressing up in Halloween costumes? Weird. Tennessee is the Oregon of the SEC. It's official. I think every single home game this year, Tennessee has had some type of a uniform gimmick or crowd gimmick. Checker this, checker that. Yellow and white checker. Now they want to do black and orange checker, smoke gray uniforms, orange helmets, all black uniforms now. The Oregon of the SEC. The results will be about the same too, overall. Anyway, Tennessee versus Kentucky. This week's gimmick, all black uniforms for the Vols. And Tennessee is a 12-point home favorite over Kentucky Wildcats. It's kind of a rivalry game, and it's been a theme this week, really. You think of rivalry weekend in college football, of course, being that last weekend of the regular season, Thanksgiving weekend. You have a lot of the in-state stuff. Georgia, Georgia Tech, Florida State, Alabama, Auburn. You got Ohio State and Michigan, Louisville and Kentucky. Just a ton of rivalry games. That's rivalry weekend. But right here, week 8, 9, whatever we're in now, I guess several rivalry games going on. Tennessee, Kentucky, I would consider that to be at least somewhat of a rivalry. Of course, you got the Georgia-Florida game this weekend. What else you got going on this weekend? Michigan and Michigan State, two in-state schools there. Ohio State and Penn State, a little bit of a rivalry. Anyway, on to the Kentucky-Tennessee game. Tennessee is a 12-point favorite. Hendon Hooker and that Tennessee offense, Jalen Hyatt, Brew McCoy. Cedric Tillman back, I don't know. We'll see. He'll be back soon. Tennessee's offense is really, really good. Captain Obvious over here, not telling you anything you don't know. I think they're number 1 or number 2 in total offense, number 1 or number 2 in scoring, number 1 or number 2 in passing offense. Pretty much the only offensive category they're not any good in. Well, I don't even want to use that term because it's not really good or bad. They're like dead last in time of possession, but that's because they score 30 seconds. So time of possession is an overrated stat. Anyway, generally speaking. But yeah, so Tennessee's offense, amazing. Kentucky's defense, pretty good. Top 15-ish, top 20-ish type defense this year. Of course, we'll see how they do against this Tennessee offense on the road in Neyland. Kentucky offensively, Will Levis might be a better pro prospect than Hendon Hooker, but not a better college quarterback than Hendon Hooker. And this is a college game. Not that Will Levis, isn't any good at the college level. He is, but he's obviously not putting up the numbers, and is never really going to do in the Kentucky offense what Hendon Hooker is currently doing in that Tennessee offense. Will Levis doesn't have the weapons to throw to that Hendon Hooker does either. What Kentucky does have is Chris Rodriguez back after being suspended the first several games of the season. He's been back for 3 games now. The running back for Chris Rodriguez, I think he's got 350 yards, maybe a little more in those 3 games. So averaging a little over 100 yards per game for Chris Rodriguez, which will be an interesting kind of back and forth to watch. Anytime Tennessee is playing, the focus tends to be on Tennessee's offense, and for good reason. Tennessee's offense is one of the best units, offensive or defensive, in all of college football this year. So I get why, people want to talk about that. It gets all the hype. It gets all the highlights. But in terms of maybe a matchup to watch in this game, what about Kentucky's running game with Chris Rodriguez? They got another guy, too. Is it Cavassier Smoke? Is he related to Kool-Aid McKinstry? I don't know. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, Kentucky's rush offense versus Tennessee's rush defense. Now, as good as Tennessee's offense is, and everyone talks about that, their defense overall is complete trash. Everyone knows that. They're ranked like 102nd or 103rd in total defense. They're either last or next to last in passing defense. But Tennessee's rush defense is pretty good. In fact, I believe they're top 10 in rush defense. I think they're like number 8 or 9. I don't look up stats and whatever before I do these videos. I watch football and then I give my opinion. But I do remember hearing or reading or something. Tennessee's rush defense is top 10 for sure. I think it's number 8. But anyway, point is, Tennessee's got a good rush defense. Kentucky's got a good rush offense. Who wins that back and forth there? Can Kentucky rush for more than, let's say, 150 yards? A lot of people like to point as 100 yards as a key number. 100 yards is not that big of a deal really anymore total, especially when you're going up against a Tennessee offense that can score fast and in bunches. However, if Kentucky can get 150, 170, 180, if they get 200 rushing, I think this thing will be very interesting. But the key for Kentucky, one more stat, since I don't look up stats and I'm not a stat guy. I read this too. In fact, I think it was earlier today I read this. Tennessee is like the 4th or 5th fastest offense in the country in terms of plays per minute, right? If you break it down over the course of a season, how many offensive plays teams run per minute, Tennessee is the 4th or 5th fastest offense in the country. Kentucky, the slowest, 131 out of 131. Kentucky runs less plays per minute than any other team in the country. And we all know how fast Tennessee goes offensively. So that's another big contrast in styles in this game. But the point is, Kentucky cannot keep up with Tennessee offensively in a back-and-forth shootout type of situation. I think I'm stating the obvious when I say that, right? So what does Kentucky want to do? Slow the game down. Well, they're great at that offensively. That's, they're 131 out of 131 in plays per minute. That in and of itself, even if their offense isn't ultra successful against Tennessee, just running plays that slow, basically, you're letting the play clock get down under 5 seconds every single time before you snap the ball. That's how you end up dead last in plays per minute. And that's not a negative stat against Kentucky. That's a decision that Kentucky has made. That's their style. That's part of their philosophy. So I'm not knocking Kentucky by saying they're 131st in plays per minute. That's the style of football they want to play, right? Well, which team is going to be able to dictate styles to the other? Even if Kentucky is not successful offensively, even if the run game is not working, they have a hard time moving the ball, it's still going to limit Tennessee's possessions, at least in terms of how many possessions Tennessee gets on average in a normal game, just because Kentucky is running the plays so spread out. If Kentucky is able to pound the ball on the ground, pick up first downs, chew clock, that of course will limit Tennessee's possessions over the course of the game even more. And that, I think, is Kentucky's only chance to win this game. They're going to have to be successful running the ball, which will slow the game down even more than normal, which in turn will limit Tennessee's offensive possessions. Because even though I think Kentucky's got a pretty good defense, it's not a situation where they're holding Tennessee under 24 points. I just don't think anybody thinks that, not even Kentucky fans. Home game for Tennessee at night. It's hard to imagine Tennessee getting held to, let's say, 24 points or less or anything like that, right? So Kentucky's going to have to limit Tennessee's possessions. I think if this game gets, the higher scoring this game gets, the less likely it becomes that Kentucky will win it. As much as I like Will Levis, and I do like Will Levis, they don't have the pieces offensively, particularly the explosive pieces offensively, the ability to hit the big plays offensively that they would need in order to keep up with Tennessee in a shootout type of game. And I know what people are going to say. Well, last year it was 45-42. Back and forth, anybody could have won. True. That was last year. I'm pretty sure if you're watching this video, you watched Tennessee play last year and you've watched them play this year. They're not the thing team. They're better this year. They're way better. Kentucky, on the other hand, is Kentucky better this year than they were last year? I don't know. Now, they wanted to be. There was reason in the offseason to think that maybe they would be, but are they? I know, they lost to South Carolina. I know Will Levis didn't play in that game, but so anyway, it's going to be interesting to watch that. Kentucky's going to be going at a snail's pace offensively. Tennessee's going to be going just absolutely as fast as they can. Tennessee's defense is absolute trash. I mean, look, Will Levis. It's not even a question of whether or not Will Levis is going to throw for 300 yards. It's a question of how much over 300 yards is he going to throw. I don't think Tennessee's held a single opponent under 300 yards passing this year. They played an FCS team last weekend, had 300 and something. Jaden Daniels, the LSU, 300 and something. The Pitt game, I don't know. I have to look it up. I'm assuming the guy had 300 and something. Anthony Richardson, who couldn't hit this Georgia banner from where I'm standing 2 feet away, couldn't hit that thing if he had a week to practice it. He had 300 and something yards. I mean, just, any idiot quarterback plays against Tennessee gets 300 yards. Tennessee does tighten up a little in the red zone, though. Their red zone defensive numbers are much better than their overall defensive numbers. That's why, go back and look at the LSU game, for example. LSU had 400 and something total yards. Seemed like they couldn't score, though. Yeah, move down the field is great, but it does you no good if you can't get any points. So we'll see. We'll see. I do think Kentucky will have success throwing the ball against Tennessee because everybody has success throwing the ball against Tennessee. But Kentucky doesn't have the passing game to keep up with Tennessee in a shootout passing contest, which is why I think it's so important that Kentucky establishes that ground game with Chris Rodriguez. If they can get upwards of 150 yards rushing and then closer to 200, I think the closer Kentucky gets to 200, I think the more likely it is they hang around. So a 12-point favorite. Tennessee's favored by 12 over Kentucky. Georgia's currently favored by 12 over Tennessee. Is there any chance Tennessee dribbles down their own leg this week, looking forward to the Georgia game and not taking the Kentucky game seriously? Well, there's always that chance, I guess, right? People love in college football to talk about a quote-unquote trap game. I don't see that happening here with Tennessee. I don't think they're overlooking Kentucky. The team is much smarter than the fans, right? The fans have been talking about nothing but Georgia for 3 weeks straight. They diarrhea of the mouth. It's like they have some kind of what's that disease called where you just blurt stuff out all the time? Tourette's. Tennessee fans have Tourette's, but their only symptom is blurting out stuff about Georgia. I don't think the team is quite that stupid. I think the fans for Tennessee are quite a bit dumber. I think the fans are quite a bit dumber than the team. I think the team actually is probably focused on Kentucky and will get the win. So the question becomes is if Tennessee is only 12 points better than Kentucky and Georgia's 12 points better than Tennessee, what does that mean for the Georgia-Kentucky game later in the year? But yeah, right now Georgia's favored by 12 over Tennessee. That's next week. Kentucky, a 12-point underdog this week to Tennessee. Georgia, in case you're wondering, 22.5-point favorite over the Gators. Biggest line of series history. But we're getting off topic. I do think Tennessee wins this game. I'm taking Tennessee to win at home. Can they cover the 12? I'm going to say yes. I think they win by a couple of touchdowns. What would the score of this one be? 45 to 30? 15-point win? 45 to 30? 42 to 28? Somewhere in that range. Anyway, I do think Tennessee wins. Although I will admit, it would be absolutely hilarious if Tennessee somehow lost to Kentucky the week before they play Georgia. Because to the Tennessee fan, that game next week at Georgia is the biggest thing to happen in Tennessee since the invention of the butt chug.